So just to start off here, let's create a box. Let's extrude that box up 12 inches. And we're just going to type in 1, 2. Let's make that a group. And then let's do the same thing again. So let's draw some walls here. Let's offset those walls in 9 inches. And then let's extrude those walls up. So now we have a building here. Let's extrude up 9 feet. So we kind of have our building here. We can now, let's make this another group, and I'm strategically selecting it in a way it's not selecting the floor. If you do select the floor, we can deselect that quite easily. So let's make this a group as well. And I want to add some sort of roof object on here. And so before I do, let's add some kind of more parts of our walls here. So let's go up here. Let's go 6 feet up, and then we're going to create a little bit of a peak here, a little bit of a monoslope roof, and we'll extrude that over. When we have an object like this, and it didn't actually naturally create those walls that we have below, there's a couple different ways of doing that. The first way I would say is I would start off by deleting this piece, and we can start by using our pencil tool and just drawing some vertical lines. And if you're having a hard time finding the vertical line button, again, you can use your arrow keys to figure out how to get the lines to go up vertical. And I'm just drawing these lines straight up. And again, the purpose of me doing this is just to give you some other techniques on how to draw and model stuff. And so then when I add a line to close this object, we can now kind of trace where these lines intersect with that box. And this gives us gives us more walls that we have here. So we can eliminate these lines now. And we can also eliminate these side lines that we have in here. So on the outside, and then once we have that box going here, we can actually delete this middle part. And we can also eliminate these interior lines going up. And so this creates there's one more back here. And this kind of creates the shape of our building, the shape of our roof. And again, it's obviously not super complicated, but just trying to show you some more techniques. Let's close this group. And I want to create a roof on here. And so let's go up here, and we can actually, let's actually just create another box here. And like so. Let's extrude this box up. Let's extrude it up. Let's maybe go a little bit more. Let's go like 16 inches for the roof. And then once we have these side pieces, let's just go out 2 feet. Let's go, maybe 5 feet for the top part. And let's go 2 feet for the sides. And we can go 2 feet for the back as well. And I just went 5 for the top part just because it creates a bit more of an overhang, especially since it's so high. So not really any crazy intent there, just more of kind of a design decision. And so now that we have this object here, we can make this a group as well. And so now we have 3 groups. We have our roof, we have our walls, and we have our floor, our pad per se. And so when we have a building like this, I think naturally our next step is we want to have some openings. We want to have some windows. And what we want to do with that is we want to start by editing our group here. And so we want to create some sort of windows along here. I'm going to go up, let's go up maybe 2 feet up here. And I'm just going to draw a line all the way across our building like this. And we can also go down the sides as well. And depending on how far and what you do with this, we can create certainly different types of windows. So let's maybe let's go over 12 inches. And let's go up 6 feet. And here we can go over, let's go over maybe 3 feet and down. And so this kind of creates our first opening. And once we have a box like this, we can extrude it in. And we can continue to kind of do this with our objects. So we can, let's go this side and we'll go 1 foot in. Find our top element there. And it doesn't want to find that. Having issues with that today for some reason. Alright, I'm just going to type in 6 because I know it's 6. And we can just drag that line all the way over. We can click 3 here. And we have our next opening. So we can extrude this in. Same thing. And so we now have kind of 2 window openings in our building. We can change sizes. We can do lots of stuff with that. Yeah. So when I'm extruding it, good question. So let me just draw one more here. I am not actually doing anything to delete it because what's happening is SketchUp's recognizing that it is a line with the other object. So let's maybe do this one wider. Let's make this 5 feet. And when I'm extruding this in, as I extrude, see how it says on face, or was saying on face there? When it's on face, it recognizes that you're cutting all the way through to the end of the object, and it's automatically opening it up. Yeah, yeah. Do you have a question as well? Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's I did that really fast, but that's kind of the idea. As we do this, let's just say, for example, I like the size of this bigger opening. I want to do this on this side, so we can actually extrude this over. We can type 24 inches, and we can actually extrude this one over 24 as well. And hopefully we do have something left in the center, and we do. So we have another object there. Just to finish this off, I'm going to remove this kind of bottom and top part there. We can remove the lines on the sides here. And I'll remove the one on that side, so maybe we'll have just these 3 windows here. On the back, doesn't obviously matter really where, but let's just say I want to do a door opening. And so I put those windows 2 feet off the ground, and I made them 6 feet tall. So it doesn't really matter how high you make this. My, I guess, more design perspective is typically we try to align all of our tops, windows, and doors. And we do a lot of 8-foot openings. And 8 foot's a little bit more custom. And part of that is a 7-foot opening. That's probably, is that 7? Probably 7, maybe 7'6". And then obviously the overall is probably 9 or 10. But I find 8's a really nice opening size because it's bigger. It makes you feel a little bit smaller from a scale perspective. And then 7 is probably a more common size that you would see. So really doesn't matter, but that's just kind of my rationale. And so I've created another box here for the door, and we can extrude that in as well. And so we have some openings here. I'm just going to close my group, and I'm just going to hide this. I'm trying to use the Revit commands for hide, which don't work in AutoCAD or in SketchUp. So the other thing I'm just going to notice here, I actually have a box on my floor here. So let's just edit my group here, and let's just delete this box in here because we actually do have a floor already, right? So we have here, we can go to unhide all. We have our floor down here. So I don't want a box on top of my floor because it's going to defeat the purpose of us showing flooring and all that kind of stuff. So we've kind of eliminated that. So we have a few objects in here. We have some windows. We have some openings. The next thing that we can do is start placing materials. And so materials have their own tab here on the side, or on the side here. And with materials, we can go here to materials, and there's a bunch of categories of different stuff. So we could make all of our walls glass, which is probably not that useful, but we can certainly do that. The one thing you'll notice is when I actually just painted that, when you click the material over here, it'll automatically turn on this paint bucket. But the paint bucket is how we're painting stuff. So, and when you click a material, it's automatically going to apply that paint bucket tool. But the other thing you're going to notice is when I applied that material, it applied it to all of the faces, not just the one face. And so what I actually want to do is I want to apply different materials to the inside versus the outside. So how do we do that? So let's go back to our pointer icon here. Let's open up our group. And when we go here, let's go to something like roofing, and we can apply this roofing material to the outside. And this way, we have to go to individual faces and apply that material. We can change our materials. Say we want to go to something like wood, and we can go to maybe this material. And as we apply this material, we want to go around and select all of our different faces. We also have the ability to edit this. So say for example, I think this is too dark, we can lighten it up. We also have a scale button here. So say for example, we think the scale is too high or too low, we could change it and reduce the scale of that image. And so essentially what we're doing is we're applying an image across this object, and that image is repeatable. So we have our walls here. If we want to do the interior, it may be useful just to actually go here and hide our roof. And that way we can kind of see inside our object a little bit. We'll double click to get into our object, and we can go back to our select and find some materials. Maybe we want to do, let me just see here, what do we have for materials? Let's go to fabric. I haven't done any fabric yet, so maybe we want to apply some kind of denim color to the walls. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but certainly an option. And if we want to do the same with the floor, we can actually open up that floor group, and we can apply that material to the floor. So let's go down to tile actually. And I'm kind of worried the way this is going to look, but it's not terrible. We can go to edit again. We can make this darker, lighter. We have some options with that, so I'll just make that a little bit darker. We can right click and close that group. And so now we have some materials applied to our object. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to start to actually make some windows. And I think there's a few different ways to make windows. I think the first way, probably the most basic way, we can go up here into make group. And what I can do is I can actually go and select the midpoint of our opening. And we can just add a box in here. And so with this box, we can go up to our materials and apply more of a glass-like material. So we can paint this glass on here. And so we kind of have a window here. So let's just close this group. And I just noticed at the top here, I haven't saved this. So let's just kind of file save as right now. And I'm going to save this in our folder here. Always good to save. And so the cool thing about this material, this window, because it's in a group, the one thing you'll notice is I didn't paint my jambs of my window. So my jambs are still showing some sort of white material. And not that it really matters a ton, but if I were to add let's go to our metal here, and let's go to maybe this gray metal, and maybe let's, well, I guess we have to apply it first. So let's apply it to our openings. And you can kind of see when we apply it, it's applying to the whole opening and not just the inside or outside where that glass is cutting through. And that's because our glass is its own group. So our glass is kind of invisible to this group because it's separated. And so once we have those materials placed in, we can darken this frame. I'm going to leave it light for a second, and maybe I'll make it a little bit darker. And so that's kind of one option to create a window. I think the other thing when we think about this window is typically we'll see a bit more of a frame. And I think the other thing with this is we actually have all of our windows being the same size right now. So that kind of leads us to be able to do more of a component approach to this. We can create one component and we can reuse that for all of our objects. And so let's start off here by drawing a box. So we're just going to completely trace our window opening here. And once I've traced that, let's select that box here. And we're going to make this a component. And let's call this window. And now that we have this box here, let's go in and edit our component. And the first thing I want to do is I want to offset. So let's offset in maybe 3 inches. And so we have a bit of a frame here. And what I want to do is I want to extrude this object through. And when we extrude it, it's going to kind of do that, which is not necessarily what I want. So I extruded it in. I did that really quickly. And then I extruded it back out. So because when I extruded it in, it created a void like this. I want to keep that solid object, so I'm going to extrude it back out to the edge, and I'm just using my mouse to line up with one of those edge elements. And now it looks like we kind of have a frame sticking in here. And let me just close this component for a second. It's something I actually kind of showed after in my previous class. And the one cool thing is now that we have this as a component, we could actually move this object over to the side here. And we can edit this object in place, or we can edit it standalone. And we have the ability to see a little bit better what's going on here. And so when we go over here, let's go to Edit Component. And you'll see that if I extrude this in, it's going to extrude it in on the other part as well. So if we extrude that all the way in, it should delete. But if it doesn't, and this is the case of your question before, if it doesn't, erase, I guess, that other plane, we can go in here and grab our mouse and we can just delete the other side of it. So that's kind of another way to do that. So before we go too far here, I actually have my frame of my window here. So let's grab our same gray color here and let's paint all of this gray. And so we kind of have this gray box here now, and I don't really need to paint the exterior, but painting the exterior is kind of cool because if we, say for example, we want to bring this out a little bit, we could. And by painting the exterior, it's already, and it looks like we haven't painted the bottom, so let's do that. But by painting the exterior, it gives us a little bit more freedom. And just to give this some contrast, I'm just going to make this a little bit darker. So we have kind of a more black frame there. And let's just click close. So you can see that when we were editing that piece over to the side, it edited it here as well. So just kind of create some efficiency. Sometimes it's difficult to edit something in place. And so if you just copy that component over, it's easier to edit that element. Yeah, I'll do that in a second. Yeah. So good question about panes. So I think I'll show panes in a second. So this is kind of one little step up, right? So the glass, you really can't tell that there's glass there, right? It's just kind of very basic. And so I think the next thing with this object is let's go into this object again. And I'm actually going to make a group inside this object. We don't really need to do this, but I think it just helps with organization because you don't have to compete with, I guess, the object that's already in there. And so this part, we can just take this a step further and we can trace this at the midpoint. And I probably could just use the box tool as well, but we'll do it this way. And again, now we can just paint this again. And let's find our glass material. And we can paint this. And so, this looks way better already just because that frame adds a little bit of depth to that. So this is kind of one way to do this. Let's close this and close this now. And so the other cool thing about this is, say for example, I want this object to actually be in a different place. I can move it, and as we edit these objects, it'll edit them all in the same place. So let me just rotate this in like that. And let's just say you hate this other window that we did because it's super boring. Let's go ahead and delete that. And we can copy this object over. So we use the move button. If you remember from last time, we can move it, but then if you look down the bottom, it says hit the control button to copy. So let's hit the control button, and we can copy this object to our next hole there. And I guess another example too is we could start also on this other wall. Say if I wanted a window over here, we could move this window. Nope, I want to move the window. We can move this window out here, and I just hit the control button on the keyboard. I strategically moved it that way because I want to rotate it because it is sticking outside. And so when we want to rotate again, if we hit the arrow buttons, we can find the direction of the rotate that we want to do. And let's just rotate. We're going to rotate it this. Yeah, I don't really do that right, but it's fine. We'll figure it out. Let's just move this back in now. And let's move this over 5 feet. I'm moving it over 5 feet because I know our window is 5 feet. And then we can use the measure button here. I don't know if I did this a nice number. 4 5/16. What a great number. And just to maybe help our own sanity here, let's edit this component. And let's extrude this frame in so the frame is flush. And that way when I push it in, it can push in flush and we don't have to go crazy with trying to figure out what we did there. Let's close this component. Let's move this object in here. And we'll move it till it intersects. And obviously you see that we don't have it cutting here. But the cool thing about this is we're almost working backwards, right? We did the opening first. Now we have the window. We can create a new opening from that window. And so what we want to do here is we want to edit our wall group, and we can just trace this window like so. And now we can just extrude this in. This one might be a little bit weirder to extrude. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I gotta see one of these lines here, and it doesn't want to work with me. Sorry, I'm just going to change my position. So there we go. Extrude like that, and it should delete. And so now we have our window there in the other side. So this window is all cool and all, but maybe we want to have some bars in here, to have some mutton bars or mullions, different kind of terminology. Technically, they would be more mutton bars than mullions, but we can edit our component. We could also make a component unique. And so say, for example, I wanted to have maybe mutton bars in one and not in another. So we can make this unique. And what that's going to do is when we edit this component, it's not going to edit the other ones, which is maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. We're going to leave our glass there, but maybe let's hide our glass for a second. And with this, we can start off by just closing this box in again, and we can do a traditional T through this. So this is kind of one way we can do this. We can offset these in. So let's offset each pane in by 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to type in 0.5, and we'll do 0.5. If I don't click. Nope. Here, I think, yeah, okay, that should be easier. Once you do it once, you can kind of line them up. Or not. There we go. And once I have these in here, I can eliminate those exterior elements, and we can extrude this middle frame in. But before I do that, I'm going to actually delete these panes here. And we can extrude this middle part in. So let's maybe extrude it in 2 inches. And then again, we can extrude it back out, and it doesn't want to actually work that time. So let's just, the cool thing about this too is we can actually just draw one line, and it will fill in that box. And I actually want the other part, so let's just draw the perimeter. Let me do a box over the perimeter. And we should be able to delete our little panes here. And it didn't want to do that either. Cool. I don't know why it's being a pain like that, but we can draw a few more of these boxes in here. Maybe that will fix that. So let's just use our pointer now. There we go. So that seemed to do the trick. And so now we kind of have this kind of frame inside here. And just to add a little bit more detail, I extruded it in 2 inches. I'm just going to extrude the outer part in 1 inch. And now it's kind of set into our window a little bit. So it just adds a little bit more detail. And we can then use our materials to paint some of these objects. Where's our materials? There's our materials. So let's go back to our metals. Where is metal? Metal. And we can paint all these pieces like so. And there's obviously a lot more parts to paint. We could have made this T a component as well, or a group. You don't have to, but sometimes it's helpful to add more detail. And we'll just go from a different angle. We'll go from the bottom, add a little bit more color. And I actually don't mind this being a different color gray because it adds a little bit of contrast to our other parts. And then we'll just look at this from the inside. I think we just got to do a couple parts on the or just the one part on the inside. And then it looks like I have something weird going on right here. Let's just erase that. I think that's, don't know what that line is either, so I'm just going to erase that one as well. And then I'm going to go here up to unhide because we did have that pane of glass before that was here. So let's go to unhide all. And so I think the one thing about that pane of glass, it might not be in the right spot. So let's just use the move button on the keyboard. Let's go into our component again. Let's move this out maybe 1 inch. And so now it's kind of within our frame. So, you know, that's how you can make some more different windows. I mean, you could make those glass pieces individual in each one, or you can just kind of have a whole sheet of glass that kind of bisects all those parts. So you could create a thickness for the glass as well. You would just want to apply that material to both parts. So that gets a little bit complicated, but when we have a piece of glass like this, and we were to extrude this up, you would probably want to apply, this kind of gets a little bit weird, but you want to apply glass to the outsides, but you might also want to apply glass to the inside of the faces. It's going to let me get in there, yeah. Because sometimes the faces are double-sided, and so if you don't apply it to the inside, it could add a weird effect to that. But anyways, I'm just going to delete this piece. So you could give your glass thickness. I think the more detail you add, the more realistic your building will start to look. Because you can see like, as much as this is more traditional it does add a lot more detail, and you know that's a window, right? You don't know it's just like some weird piece of glass. I mean, these windows, they're obviously a bigger piece of glass, but you can see how the frame has different elements. We have the outer frame, and then we have the window, and then there's like a little bit of a gap, and then we have the hardware for the window. So adding some of that detail adds a little bit more information, which makes it feel a little bit more realistic. So that's kind of some of the basics here that I wanted to cover. One other thing I wanted to cover, which is it came up in our last class. I think a lot of people probably have some interest in creating a slide element. And I think slides and other objects get a little bit complicated. And so before I go into the slide, last week we kind of talked about intersecting shapes. And so say, for example, we have, let me just do a triangle again, a pyramid. So we have a pyramid object like this. Like we did last time, we can offset this object in. And so maybe we'll offset it in like a foot. And we want to create some sort of pyramid-like object, so we can create this. Let's maybe go up 4 feet. No, I did 4 inches. Let's go up 4 feet. And let's go up another 1 foot. And so the reason why I did 2 there is our first one we can connect to our inner pyramid. And I did not connect that line properly. So we can connect that to our inner pyramid. And before I go too far, I'm actually just going to delete this inner part. And we also can have an outer pyramid. And I did not connect that one either. Like this. And so you can see how our pyramid is not just a line, it's actually got thickness now. And as we did last time, we can intersect this pyramid with another object. And so if I go up here to our circle, we can use our circle and we can hit the arrows on our keyboard to get more of a vertical object. And so I think this one is going the wrong direction. We'll just do something like this. And so maybe we want a circle that intersects this way. So maybe it goes like this. Maybe it goes like this. And we have some sort of object that's intersecting another object. And we can select both of these objects. We can go up here to edit. We can go to intersect with selection. And we can kind of eliminate all of these parts now. So we have and we probably don't really need this small triangle, but I'm just going to leave it there, show. But the cool thing about doing it this way is you kind of keep your thickness, you have a bit of a thickness to your walls of your object. And so the reason why I showed that was when it comes to a lot of stuff, we can use that intersection kind of as a basis to do more, right? So we could start off with a piece of a ground here. We can draw a box. We can extrude that box up. Let's maybe extrude it up like 4 feet. And say, for example, you wanted to create a slide. And, I think the most logical slide is to have some sort of triangle like this that we extrude over. And kind of boring, right? It's just a block that goes down. It's super simple. But, say if we wanted to have more of a U shape that kind of followed that same slope, well, how do we model that? I think using some of those techniques that we just talked about with components, with groups, we can create a slide down on the ground here. So I'm just going to grab a box. I'm going to use the arrows. And we're going to draw a box this way. And with our slide, let's maybe do, let's do 8 inches. And then we'll go down maybe, because it's a children's slide, maybe we want to have higher walls just so we know they can't fall out. So let's maybe do 24 inches. And let's go over maybe 24 inches. And let's go up that again to the top. And let's go over 8 And my box I started with was a little bit arbitrary, and so it actually kind of looks like it's small in this case. But we can create a box like this. I guess it doesn't matter that our floor is a lower size. But before I extrude this, we can make a 2-point arc. I want to do that the opposite way. Trying to do this without doing a circle, but maybe the circle's easier. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw in here. I'm going to go over, let's go over 8, and let's go up 6. And let's do the same on this side. Let's go over 8. And I'm just making up these dimensions. They don't really matter. And so what I can do here is I can use the circle button, and we can make a circle like this, make a circle like this, and we can erase a whole bunch of these lines now. And what this kind of gave us is some curved sides, essentially. And instead of extruding just that box, now we're extruding this kind of longer shape like this. So let's extrude this out like this. And it's obviously not a very nice slide, it's just obviously a box still. But by having this object, we can grab it, we can make it into a group or a component. I might do a component in this case. Let's call this a slide. And what I'll do is, instead of moving this object, let's copy it, obviously with the move button though, and we can copy it up here. And the purpose of me showing you this whole thing is very similar to the window, where it's really easy to edit this object down on the ground because we know how to work with it. But when it's on an angle like this, it's kind of hard to work with it. And so by doing this, we can actually edit it both ways. We can edit it down on the ground, or we can edit it up on the side like this. So let's take this object, let's edit the component, and let's extrude this all the way down into the ground like this. Let's make another box here. And we can again use, let's see the arrows here. It's going to actually want, because I rotated this component, it's going to want to be on that plane. So let's do it this way. Let's create a box vertical this way. Doesn't want to go that way. Cool. And to alleviate my pain, let's just do it like this, and we can create a box. And I do have a method to my madness here. So by creating that box, let's go back into our component. Let's retrace that box. And we can extrude this box through our shape. What did I just do there? There we go. I'm going to extrude that through our shape like this. And let's use the intersect tool just to make sure we get all those intersecting lines. And yeah, it should work. I'm just trying to think if I had everything. Intersect with selection. And now we can just go through and kind of delete a whole bunch of stuff here. And it looks like it didn't intersect fully. So let's pull this bottom part down here. I think what I want to do is pull this kind of through if it lets me. Will it let me? I don't know. I'm making this obviously more complicated, but you kind of get the point. This can kind of help you. It should actually work in the intersecting. Intersect with selection. It's not intersecting those lines. Don't know why. Maybe I got to select the whole thing. Intersect with selection. There we go. That looked like it worked. Okay, cool. So now that we did that, we can eliminate all this stuff, and it will keep our slide form. And now our slide kind of touches the ground and kind of stops at the ground. And it's a little hard to kind of see exactly what we're erasing here, so let's close and let's open our component over here. And essentially what I did was I made that bottom of the slide kind of parallel to the ground. So really kind of the purpose of me showing all that was just to show you how to kind of cut off this one part. So it looks good over here. And let's just eliminate these. So it looks like it's good over here because it's actually perpendicular to the ground, not necessarily perpendicular to the slide itself. So again, it's a bit of a weird way to show a tool, but sometimes by rotating the component, you can edit it in different ways, and it ends up becoming easier because you're not trying to do things on an angle, I guess, right? You're kind of rotating the object on an angle, and then you're going backwards. So that's a little bit of that. The last thing I just want to cover today, let's just unhide everything here. Obviously, super great to hide things. It's a great tool, but I want to see more of a floor plan of our building that we just did here. So let's go up here and let's go to Tools, and we have a Section Plane tool. And so we can just click somewhere on the ground. The reason why I'm clicking over here, because if I click on this, it's going to follow the orientation of that object. So I'm going to click right here, and we're going to call this Floor Plan. And I want to move this section cut up, so let's raise it up so we're kind of halfway in. And so when it comes to floor plans, I try to usually explain this like kind of my chest height right here is probably around 4 feet in height. And so when we're talking about a floor plan, we're kind of talking about 4 feet down is where we want to look. So I just, if you think about your body, wherever you think 4 feet is on your body, you just kind of want to pretend that is the height of everything. And so when you're looking at a floor plan, you're going to see desks. You maybe see the bottom edge of this TV. You see the bottom edge of these. You're not going to, however, see fans and lights up there. You will probably see light switches, door handles, that kind of stuff. And so 4 feet is kind of a good metric to think about where you cut a floor plan. And so when we do this, we can kind of artificially try to find that 4 foot mark. And this allows us to kind of see in the building like this. So the second thing we want to do with this is, now that we have that floor plan set up, I want to set up a way to get access to this very easily. I don't have to go and find it. And so let's close our materials. Let's close our styles. Down here we have a tab called Scenes. So we want to open up our scenes. And we want to find a scene at the top here. No, I don't want to do drawing. So I turned on this element called Views. I just find it super helpful for me because I can then click this top part and it takes me to the top of my view here. And then I can move over. What am I doing? No, I don't want to do that. I'm going to move this. All right. What am I doing? Okay, so we have our floor plan here, and I want to save this floor plan as a view. So before I do that, let's actually go here and let's actually hide our section. Let's hide that. And we can actually hide everything else we have in here because we don't really need to see all this other stuff in our floor plan. And so let's hover over here, and we kind of want to center this in our view. And then here we have this plus button, and we can go to create new scene and save as a new style. Sure. And then let's rename this. So let's call this scene, let's call this floor plan. And with no M. And so this is really a perspective-based floor plan. It's actually really nice. I think perspective-based floor plans are somewhat preferable because you actually get to see a little bit of what's going on versus just the 2D. But I want to show the 2D. So let's go down here and up here and let's go to camera. Let's change this to parallel projection. And you can see the difference, right? This is just looking straight on. You don't see any of the walls converging down to the floor. So let's actually update this view. And let's save it with this updated part. We have a lot of glare here, so I don't know how. Let's see if we can kind of remove some of this. No, it doesn't want to remove that. That's fine. Let's click add a new scene, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I want to add this scene as a, let's call this floor plan, and I'll put in brackets perspective. And then with this one, I want to show the camera. So let's put that in perspective view. And then let's right click and update. And we'll update. So now we kind of have our two different versions of this. There we go. Good double click. So we have our perspective and we have our normal floor plan. So that's kind of how to start to set up scenes. And then you can see at the top here, we actually have these as tabs at the top now. So let's kind of zoom out of here, and I wanna not cut this anymore. So let's go here. Let's go up to edit. Let's unhide all, and then I don't really want to use this section anymore. So let's right click on this section, and we're gonna go to active cut and turn it off. And so that essentially turns off that section view. So with these section views, we can do another section view. So we can do one sideways. So let's go to section pane. Let's kind of make it parallel to one of these walls. I think this sideway is a little bit nice. We'll call this section 1. And then let's grab this section and let's move it into our building a little bit, like so. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and hide this other section. And we can actually hide this section as well. And then let's find a side view that looks into there like so. And we can turn on perspective if you want, like that. And then we can click add new scene. And we can call this section 1. Like so. And so now we have that other view set up. So again, kind of a nice way to start to organize yourself a little bit. Let's do unhide all again. And let's turn off this section as well. Turn off active cut. Let's go and hide both all this stuff again. Let's maybe we'll leave our person in there for now. I'm just going to hide this other stuff over here. And I want to create a bit of a camera view. And so we can find something that works here. We can even turn on 2-point perspective view. Let's maybe show our little person here. And we can click add to scene. And so we can just call this 3D perspective view front. 3D, well, let's call it front actually, 3D front, just to keep the name short. And so now we have all of our different scenes. And so the cool thing when you switch to them, because we had a certain cut planes on and off, SketchUp automatically remembers that they're there and will automatically apply that view to the same kind of settings you had before. If you do add stuff, like for example, we added this section, we can go to hide here, and then we can click update, and that'll just update that section so it doesn't show. And then the same with this perspective one. We can select that section and hide it and update that view. So that's kind of how to set that up. The only last thing that I want to show is we did talk a little bit about it last time, but it's tagging. So we can grab all of these windows here, and we can add a tag to them. So we can go up here to tags, we can click new tag, we can call this windows. And then we still have them selected, but you can see here at the top it says untagged. We can change that tag to be Windows now. And this just allows us the ability to turn on and off objects. So it's a great way of staying organized. You can kind of consider it like layers or something like that. And so, I could make one for the roof, for example. I could make the roof its own roof tag. And instead of turning off or hiding the roof, I can now just physically turn off that object. And so I think last time I showed you could make the front wall of your building its own object, and you can just say front wall tag, and you can hide and unhide that. And so there are different ways you can kind of keep this organized, but that's a few different things you can kind of work through. I'm going to stop this recording.